Hey guys, Ashley here. Today I have a quick DIY followed by a more time-consuming project, but together they pair up so nicely. I found this ladder out by the propane tank when we moved into our house. I love the way it looks, so I took it in, cleaned it up, and hung it up on the wall. There were these metal rungs that were underneath each step, and I want to hang picture frames from those. So I gathered up a couple picture frames that I had at home and found these loops. With a pair of pliers, I opened them so they would make little hooks to hook onto the metal rungs. Next was the color. I did not want these frames to be the colors they were, so I painted this one blue. With a baby wipe, I simply wiped off the blue around the edges because I did like that white detail around. For this one, it felt like deja vu since it's the same frame I used for the riser I had made, but this time I was going to do it in gray. Two coats were on and I'm satisfied with the results. Now to make this frame a little bit rustic. Now that the hooks are all on, they are ready to hang. I could have continued and put picture frames all the way down the ladder, but I decided to make a table runner for the bottom. I drew up the design I was going to go with and started cutting my fabric. I chose something simple with only 3 colors. Everything is cut. I have the centers to my star, my pieces to make my flying geese 4 at a time, my cornerstones, I've got my binding. I am all set. I'm starting off with my flying geese 4 at a time here. So you'll have 1 large goose square and 4 small sky squares. I'm going to take my smaller pieces and draw a line down the center of each one. Now I want to place these smaller pieces onto a larger one and pin them diagonally to each other. Now you want to go in and sew a 1/4 inch on each side of this center line. From there, it's time to cut straight down the center on your line that you have, and you have 2 new pieces. You want to iron up the smaller sky pieces. With your last 2 sky pieces, you will pin them into the corners again and sew a 1/4 inch on each side of that line as well. Next, let's cut down the centers again so we have our 4 flying geese. These will be the points to my star. With my ruler, I'm trimming these down so that way they will all be 2.5 by 4.5 inches in the end. I like to follow along with that 45-degree angle right there along my point to make sure that it's going to add up properly. Now that my 4 flying geese are done, it's time to assemble my star. I like to lay out all my pieces to see what my block is going to look like. Now that I'm satisfied with the way it looks, it's time to sew it all together. Now for ironing it. I like to take the center of the star and iron my seams inwards. So those ones are both going in. So now for my outside pieces, I want to iron those ones outwards. Just like that. Now when it comes time to pin them together, it's easy to sandwich them because my seams are going in the opposite directions. So you place them right together and then you can see how I'm moving my fingers. They are snug and they won't move. And I pin it down. on the next row, I'm going to continue doing the same thing, sewing, pinning, assembling. For the last row, same thing again, sewing, pinning, assembling. So my block is done, it's all sewed, and I love it. Now it's time to make 2 more of these. Once you have all 3 made, it's time to sew those together now. To get it nice and smooth, and then I will carry on with the batting and backing. I've chosen some blue fabric I had from my stash to use as the backing, and cut a piece of that as well as a piece of batting to fit to size of the table runner. Now I like to do all of my pinning on the floor, and I know my piece is a little bit wrinkly, but because it is a small area, I can pull it tight enough that it's not even gonna matter. So with some masking tape, you want to tape it down and pull it nice and tight. All of my wrinkles are gone, and now I will lay out my batting and my top piece. I want to lay it down and run that over with my hands to make that smooth as well. Bring out your pins. Now we need a bunch of safety pins and we will start pinning. I start from the center and work my way out, usually going every 2 to 3 inches, give or take, sometimes a little bit further, but whatever works. Now that my table runner is all pinned and sandwiched, it is time to choose a design for it. I grabbed this stencil and with my chalk pencil started drawing on the parts that I wanted to have as my design. That'll do, pig. I like the way it looks, so now it's hand stitching. Not my favorite part, but it does pass some time while I sit in front of the TV. Okay, so as you can see, I tied 2 knots, one in front of the other, so that way when I put it through like this, I will have a backup plan, I guess. So if you put it in the wash and let's say one knot pulls out, you have another one to hold your stitching in place. And then it begins. Prepare yourself for the pain, the pressure, the raw finger, and the stitching. When you come to the end of your thread and you are ready to tie it off, you will have to do the same thing as when you start. I make 2 knots, one in front of the other, and then proceed to pull them through. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes the struggle is real. Getting those knots through sometimes does not want to go very smoothly. You need to give a little effort, but they will make them through. Time to trim your piece and get rid of all the extra on the edges so that way you have a fresh surface to add your binding to. You want to sew all your binding strips together so that way you have one long cohesive strip. With that, I always iron down the edge about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever you prefer, just so that way it's nice and neat. From there, you want to fold your piece in half and then iron it down all the way through. There you have it. Now you're ready to sew this piece onto your top. So on the good side, you want to place it on the edge, and I usually start a few inches back. So you'll sew this on at 1/4 inch all the way until you get to a corner. Now let me try to explain how I do this. So I grab it, pinch the corner so that way it makes kind of like a little piece that you can flip over. I'll show you better on this side. So there you see, I pull it in, makes kind of like a flip over corner piece, and then sew it down again. So I sew to the edge, then I cut it, and then I start on the next corner so that way it makes this. I'm sorry, my explanation is terrible. I don't know how to explain it better. So once you've sewed your binding all the way around and you've made it to the end where you have that little 2 inch that I left at the beginning, I trim the piece that's left over and tuck it inside of that little 2-inch piece. All that's left is to sew across to the end. Now your binding is on the front side, and time to sew it onto the back side. Grab that needle and thread again, and let's start. So I go in here at my sew line and start off like that. So I will go in through the binding, just getting the one layer at the top, and then sewing it at the quarter line again. And repeat, going through the first layer, and then at the 1/4 inch line again. And when you pull it snug, it looks nice. You don't see any of your stitches. And carry on. Now, once you hit a corner, now I'm not sure if I'm doing this properly. This is just how I do it. So if you watch, we'll see. I will go right up to the corner, pull it snug, and then I flip my corner down and then the other side over, so it makes a nice point. From there, I sew through both layers, up, and then back through on the back side, and carry on just as I was on the sides. I've given it a wash, and now I will go over it with the iron so it's nice and smooth. It's finally finished and time to display.